Okay, welcome everybody to the April 17th, 2025 edition of the Technical Advisory Council of the Confidential Computing Consortium. We are an open and collaborative community. Everybody is welcome to join in the conversation here, just as you are welcome to join in any of our open source projects or working groups. In a few slides, we'll have an opportunity for people to introduce themselves if they haven't had an opportunity to do that a couple times. As we have a lot of different companies here, we also abide by the antitrust policy of the Linux Foundation. You can read more about that on the linuxfoundation.org website at /antitrust-policy. Quite a few things on the agenda today. We've got a couple of announcements, and then we've got the annual update for Grameen. We have also we might kind of switch this order around a bit because I see Mark is on, and I think Mark typically has to leave before the hour.
I'll be okay today. I'll be okay today.
Okay. Well, we'll still play it by ear.
Okay.
The GRC had offered up 3 documents, and I see there's been some review, but we want to make sure everybody takes a look at those. There's the security baseline concept that Emily presented to us last session. And if we have a volunteer to lead some discussion on that, we want to figure out what those security baselines mean or could mean for CCC projects. And then time permitting, we were also hoping to have just sort of a roundtable discussion of OC3 takeaways. Now, I actually have to drop the last half hour of the meeting, so if we've got a volunteer to lead that, we can continue that. Otherwise, we can flip that over to the next issue of our meeting. Any other agenda items for today? Okay, with that, we'll take a quick look at voting member attendance, though I don't think we have anything that we need to vote on in that list of agenda topics. So Paul, thanks again for joining. I think we do not have Nathaniel or David, right? Catherine, thanks for joining. Time is always bad for Howard. I am here. Do we have Henry or Kevin? No meta today. Alec is typically here. I don't remember him sending a note beforehand, so we might yet see him later. No NVIDIA today. And Yash previously sent me a note when we talked. Well, actually, we talked in our stand-up earlier this week, and he mentioned that he was unavailable today. And Mingshen, okay, no TikTok, and no Shielded Technologies today. All right, so those are voting members, but everybody's welcome to contribute here. If you haven't had a chance to introduce yourself to the community, and feel free to do that at least twice because it takes a while for people to get to know each other. Feel free to pop off of mute and let us know how you like to be addressed and where you're joining from and your interest in confidential computing. Well, I see several of our Grameen contributors here, and maybe we'll let them introduce themselves during the Grameen section, which will be shortly. But otherwise, do feel free to introduce yourselves as we go along. Last meeting,
do you want us to, maybe we can introduce?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah,
Sure.
quickly. Okay, sure. So I'm Mona Vij. I am from Intel. I'm part of Grameen project, and I guess I've attended this TAC several times before. And we have several other members, and maybe they can all introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Don Porter. I'm a professor at UNC Chapel Hill and part of the Grameen project, and happy to be here.
Thanks for joining, Don.
I'm Wojciech Porczyk from Invisible Things Lab, also working on Grameen. I go by my pronounceable nickname Voyo. Thank you.
I'm Calvin Ching from Intel, and I'm a Grameen maintainer.
Thanks again for joining, Kevin. All right, well, that was great. All right, last session, we got the NARC's annual update. So kind of keep in mind the same kind of questions as we get into the Grameen topic. We had an update from Alec on the ISO initiative that he's going to go take a look at. Emily presented on the security baselines. And again, we'll be looking for somebody to help lead that conversation later in the agenda today about what we do about those. And then I think we had a little bit of discussion on liaisons. I don't think there's any follow-up on that we need to do right now. And then we had a tech talk from Brian Kelly at Microsoft about roots of trust and some of the complexities involved in building a trusted boot kind of environment. As far as announcements for today, these are the couple things that I was aware of, but people can feel free to jump in with others. The CCC has a booth at RSA, and if you are a CCC project or a CCC member company, the cost of a booth is pretty substantial. So if you are a member project or company, getting time at our booth is probably kind of pays for your participation, so to speak. So feel free to make use of that. I think there's a couple slots yet available.
Yeah, if people do want to do that, get in touch on Slack or get in touch with me or Renu or Rian or Rachel, and we can make that happen. Even if you don't want a full slot, you're welcome to come and hang out on the booth and talk about what you do with CC. So please.
And
yes,
sorry,
thank
a
you.
short sales pitch. Not hurry if you want a slot because they're running out quickly.
Yeah, and again, space is pretty expensive at RSA, so make use of this benefit that's available to you. All right, next meeting or next week, we have a governing board meeting. If people have topics that they want elevated to the board level, I am all ears, so you can either bring those up right now, or you can hit me on Slack or on the mail list. So do let me know. Is there any particular topics that people had interest in that need to be elevated? Thinking through what we've been working on for the last month. Okay. Any other announcements? Going once, going twice. All right, well then it is time for one of the main events here, the annual project review for Grameen. Grameen is our most mature project in the consortium. It's in production use in a number of places. And I will turn the floor over to our Grameen maintainers so they can walk us through their update.
All right, even though it's annual update, somehow looks like we skipped the update last year. So last time we came in was in February of 22. Okay, you can see my screen, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, okay, so let's just kick this off. I have a bird's eye view of the Grameen project, just a high-level summary. As Dan mentioned, Grameen is a library OS, and it was designed to run unmodified Linux applications on SGX. That's where it saw the most demand and popularity, even though you can run it without SGX as well as a plain library OS. It's LGPL on GitHub. It's a community-based project. We joined the CCC in 21, and of course that did help us grow into this lot more stable project. And we are the only project, I believe, in CCC that achieved the graduation status, and that was also in 23. That was shortly after we did our last update. And it's not just you run your application, it gives you the whole suite of things, building containers, attestation. So you can build end-to-end solutions with Grameen. We do regular releases. So the latest release was done in October of 24, and we are expecting shortly next release 1.9 under active development. We have several customers. I'll talk about some of these later. Several use cases. You can see the applications that can run, and it has a very nice modular architecture. And I'll mention why that is useful now as we're extending it. And then, as I mentioned, we have a very healthy community contributions, both with respect to finding bugs, issues, users, and contributions. Okay, so highlights. So I want to highlight some of the things that happened actually turns out in last almost 2 years now. And you all know that happened here. We transitioned from incubation to graduation, but that was since the last status, so I decided to add it here. We also received this OpenSSF Security Best Practices badge in 24, and I will let Kylon speak a little bit more on that, just to highlight what that is.
Yeah, last year we achieved the OpenSSF best practices basic level, and we're now at about 96% complete with the silver level. Yeah, that's basically the status.
So yeah, we're working towards the silver level, which we are not quite there,
Yeah.
but basic was first which we went for. Another big highlight, which we are quite proud of, happened in December of last year in 24, where we received this ACSEC. ACSEC is a computer application security conference on its 40th year.
Please check the passkey and try again.
Okay.
You're good.
And this one, I will let Dawn talk a little bit more about it.
Yeah, so this is a relatively new award. It's designed, as the name implies, to recognize sort of research artifacts that have been of practical use. And, in some sense, for a lot of the same reasons, we were able to get graduation status and that you all adopted us in the first place. We were, honored for, in particular, over 100 research papers have used Grameen as some sort of a building block, either to extend as a prototype or to attack or to compare against. Not just a simple citation. So again, we were really honored to receive this. I think this is the third or fourth time this has been awarded. The first award went to Tripwire, if you've ever used that tool. Another thing that we should mention that didn't make it onto the slides was that a year ago, we also received an award from the National Science Foundation for the partner universities in what's called a transition to practice project, which is designed to help, incubate research ideas into practical deployments that helps fund work from the university side on the project.
Yeah,
that's fantastic. It's great to have a CCC project win that award. And for everybody's benefit, we introduced the idea of the projects adopting the Security Best Practices badge last year, and we've gotten pretty good compliance coming through, but not every project has fully achieved the badge. So it's great to see that Grameen has covered that ground. And then our approach to governance in the CCC has been this sort of minimum viable approach, where we want to create opportunities for projects to do things more so than we want to require things of them. And so I think that this has worked out pretty well here.
Yep, thanks, Dan. Okay, and I decided to add this slide, and I'll probably not really go through it, but this is sort of our timeline of Grameen project, which we are quite proud of. It started back in 2011 in Dawn's lab as a research project, and we've come a long way, and I won't go through all the different milestones, but I can say there were several points in this timeline where we could have died and not really gone ahead, but the group came together. And then, like I mentioned, joining CCC, which happened in 21, also gave it another boost. And then we pushed forward to where we are today. And the other big highlight, which I will again talk about a little bit later is because of its modular design, we are able to build another backend, and that's Grameen TTX, and I'll show that in the next few slides. Again, for the benefit of people, I know it's mostly a project update, but at least people who are new here, they should know a little bit about what Grameen is. Like I said, it's a library OS. So if you look at the chart on the right, we pull in a lot of the kernel functionality into the user space, into this thing called library OS, where a lot of those can be serviced inside the address, and then there are still certain host services where you have to leave the process or the enclave to go down to the host. For example, network stack and the file system. And so this design was really nice for SGX because SGX has this nice property that every time you leave the enclave, you need to make sure you secure certain things. So now we have interfaces. We just had to secure this layer between process and the host. And we also have a Grameen manifest file that defines the security posture of your application. You can say what files you want to encrypt, what ports you want to connect to. There are several other things you can specify in the Grameen file, and all the measurements of all the loadable files, because a lot of Linux applications use loadable libraries, and we don't randomly bring them in. We make sure they're integrity checked before they're brought in. So manifest file comes in really handy. Anyway, active development over 8 years, nice modular design. And like I mentioned, it actually can run faster in some cases because it brings the functionality out, but then offloads the file offload certain functionalities to the host. Quick progress since the last update, which was, like I said, almost 2 years ago. So we have done almost 4 releases since then. It was 1.4 was the last release. And now we are distributing packages. We also distribute official Docker image. We've been doing this for some time now. And like I said, active development, we have a very active GitHub repo. Right now we have 106 open issues and about 50 pull requests. Out of those, about 10 are P1 issues. So we are actively getting those. And then there are P2 and P3, which are some are feature requests or yeah, and then but yeah, so about 100 issues that are out there, which we are sort of working through. So we are happy to take any contributions. Other thing, over the last 2 years, we tried to make Grameen much easier to use. So like people used to build these manifests, which were buggy, and then it take forever to debug. So now we have this manifest check tool, even though you do have to manually create the manifest, but you can check it to make sure it conforms with the schema. You don't have these schema type problems at least. And then there was another tool which is called Six-Truck View tool that is that can dump sort of the metadata from for the code verification, because if you're generating, like you have a blob of Grameen, you generate some hashes, how do you verify it? And we're giving the tools to the verifiers to be able to dump the code information. We also, as many of you know, we actually had this tool called Grameen Shielded Containers, where you can take a Docker image and it will automatically Grameenize it. Basically, add Grameen to it and host your application inside an enclave. We have a complementary tool called scaffolding, where you actually take an application and put it in a container. So that container is actually a lot more tailored or smaller to the application, as opposed to taking this mega container and Grameenizing it. But both approaches work for different use cases, different people. We're supporting both. Attestation, like I mentioned, we have end-to-end attestation support, but RATLS that came out of our group, Grameen was the first project to implement it. We also worked with CCC attestation SIG to define this interoperable RATLS. So the different RATLS implementations use the same format. And we have now updated RATLS to adhere to this interoperable RATLS. Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, could you say just a little bit more about the difference between the scaffolding tool and the GSC path?
Sorry, maybe I went too fast. So GSC, you take a Docker image, just I don't know, you have Redis you want to enclavize, for example. So you have a Redis Docker image. GSC will automatically take it, create all the dependencies because Docker image already has all the dependencies for Redis. Put it in your manifest, automatically generate the manifest sign, and sort of generate and add Grameen to that image. So the end result is Grameenized Docker image. So you just push a button, give me your Redis image, Docker image, automatically there'll be a new image which will be Grameenized, right? And end result is you just running Redis in an enclave. via container. So that's one option, which is what was very popular, but it also pretty much we pull in everything you have in Docker image into the manifest file. Your dependencies are quite large because sometimes people throw the whole Ubuntu releases in their Docker image. Docker images are not made with care. So on the other hand, you can bring me an Redis binary, right? And then scaffolding will actually generate a container, a Docker container, pulling in all the dependencies that are needed along with Grameen. And end result will still be a Graminized Docker image in both the cases. In one case, you bring the Docker image. In other case, you bring the binary, application binary. Does that make sense? Okay, will you please? Yeah.
This is a poor example. Scaffolding is for frameworks. Like if you are developing applications that use some framework, for example, Python framework for doing web pages like Flask or one of those Java frameworks, and it introspects into that framework and into the application that was written. And it also only pulls those dependencies that are specified by whatever packaging format of that application you are doing. For example, if you're pulling Python modules, it will pull Python modules only into the manifest. The benefit is that the TCB is much smaller if you are doing just that. And it also means that if something unrelated changes, it does not affect the measurement of the enclave, which makes it easier to make sure that the lifetime of your application is controlled. Very short.
Thank you.
Thanks for you. All right. And then for attestation, we have our own backend, which is using decap verifier libraries. But obviously, a lot of people want to deploy the plugin in Azure. So we also have we have really nice. So RATLS was enhanced to have this plugin architecture. We can plug in different backends. For example, we have a plugin for MAA and also for ITA. So this was just overall Grameen changes, and then in the core library OS, we also made lots of changes. The one was more around, which started more as a research project. This is typically what we do. We take some of those research works and we move them into the core Grameen. So we moved this communication with hardware accelerators, which involves flexible ioctls as well as untrusted shared memory support into core Grameen. This is for use cases where you do want to communicate to an accelerator, say GPU. By the way, this also goes along with, we have a manifest option because it's untrusted shared memory support. In manifest, you explicitly have to make sure it's mark it as untrusted. So application developers know that they have to do something extra. For example, you have to encrypt your memory before you use the shared memory and things like that. But this is an enabling feature. But we manage the security of it by marking it untrusted in manifest. Applications need to be aware that they're using it explicitly. It's not under the hood done automatically by Grameen. There was event FT is one of the features, several use cases needed. We added a secure implementation of that. We have done a lot of enhancements for our encrypted file support because as more and more people are using it, encrypted files come in very handy. You're automatically encrypting files that you're bringing in or producing, and then we were finding either bugs or new feature requests and whatnot. So I listed some of them here. And of course, we are constantly tracking all the standard libraries that you use. We are very, very careful in making sure as soon as any bugs are reported or as they have new versions come up, we keep up with the latest security fixes throughout. We have implemented several new system calls. Again, those are implemented as and when requirements come in. We implemented EDMM few years back. Last update we had the EDMM in the main repo, but we have since moved from basic EDMM support to now we can dynamically create threads. We also have the lazy memory allocation as an optimization. The big highlight, which is more on the research side, which is still not part of the main Grameen repo, is that we actually built a new backend which is called Grameen TDX for supporting lightweight TDs. I have a typo there with Grameen. So this is going back to, like I mentioned, Grameen is a modular library OS. Historically, it was just a libOS for performance or compatibility, and we moved it to SGX. We built a new backend. So we have a Grameen Direct backend, we have a Grameen SGX backend, and now we have a Grameen TDX backend. I don't have much time to go through it, and I'm happy to come back and talk about Grameen TDX at some point in time. But right now it's under Grameen project, but it's in its own repo. It's not part of the core Grameen backend because it was developed as a research artifact. But just to highlight, we now basically have this libOS Grameen VM version of Grameen. So we have a Grameen Direct and a Grameen SGX version. They both run in an address space as a process. Now we have a Grameen VM and a Grameen TD version, which runs in a VM and a TD. But the nice thing here is the backend is just about 17K lines of code. 70% of Grameen code, which sits in the Grameen libOS, was reused. It's the same across the two projects. And that's what we are quite proud of. Grameen actually sort of proved its modularity, that it actually works. We have this minimal implementation. We're only supporting VSOC interfaces out of Grameen TDX. So VSOC file system, files, and console. Of course, we use TD shim. You do need a virtual BIOS. We published this paper in CCS 24. Slides are here. GitHub repo is here. I can come talk about this another time in detail if there's interest. Because we're continuing to work on it some more. It needs a little bit more work. Okay, going forward, like I mentioned, we continue our cadence of we keep fixing bugs, adding new features, tooling, documentation. This is just a result of as more users are using it, we're getting more requirements and we're updating them. We'll continue to support both the container projects and we'll see which way they go. We also constantly make sure that we stay up to date with the latest SGX hardware. For example, AEX Notify. For those who don't know, AEX Notify was added in SGX to protect against all the side channel attacks that are enhanced by SGX step, where you can single step through the enclave. And we already have pull requests for these. We just have to merge these in Grameen. And then we'll keep on doing this because there's so much research happening on Grameen. We will take some of those research work and push them into the production. Like I mentioned, Grameen TDX is one example. Hardware accelerators is more work happening. We have initial building blocks in place and we'll probably add more features. Our community continues to grow. As several of you know, Photonics actually joined Grameen project. It would be nice to see more contributions from them. They were very active for some time. Hopefully they'll come back at some point in time or not, I don't know. But they are part of our project. We have another company who recently reached out to us. It's a company in Japan. They are using Grameen in production in several use cases. And there's this another hardware feature which was sort of I guess, overlooked. Nobody was using it. They have a really nice use case for it for serverless, and they're contributing this. So this was nice to have them join as well. Yeah, okay. Some more highlights. I mentioned some of this. Dawn actually already mentioned. We have had a big academic impact. 100+ papers have actually used it, like Grameen as a libOS, either for sandboxing or whatever, enhancing. But we have 700+ citations as well, and we have some examples on what people use it for. So it is really helping enable TE research, lowering the bar. You can scale to large complex use cases. For example, we also had a paper where we ran Llama for performance benchmarking on Grameen, and we have some really good results. So we can run as big as large, not really language models that would sort of fit on a single box can be run on in SGX. And actually, Grameen is now also being used for like CVM research. One is with Grameen TDX, but people have used it as sandboxing inside CVM as well. Industrial impact. Okay. 20+ is what I know. Some of them are listed here. Not all of them are listed here because there's few I know that I can't list. But I would say the number is about 20+, and there are others that we don't know. For example, a company was already using it in production, and they only contacted us just few weeks or last few months back. I have the list here. And the typical use cases remain the same. Confidential AI services is one big one. Secure data collaboration, blockchain guys are using it a lot. And then generally secure software services, databases, web servers, or whatever you can throw in there. And there are a lot of frameworks that have adopted Grameen, so that also helps. Like if you're using that framework, you automatically use Grameen. Yeah, so I think this slide hasn't changed from last time. We have no change in our charter. We have this COC 2.0 with slightly modified charter there. I have listed all the repos. I have Grameen TDX repo in there as well. Yes, we try to maintain our roadmap in this roadmap project, which also because we do meet regularly and update it. Yes, we have an unfortunate change in our management team. We had one of our very active maintainers, Dimitri, who was at Intel, left Intel. So, but then we gained Kailun from Intel as well. It has been great to have Kailun being part of the team. So I guess numbers wise, there's not really a big change, but yeah. So, and I guess that's the part of open source projects. People come and go. Budget. So in 23-24, I think this is the only thing I could find. That means we didn't use the budget one of the years, but we used 10K for buying one EMR server. This is hosted at ITL. For CI in the past, in 22, I think CCC had funded us again with 10K for, I think, the older hardware Ice Lake servers at UNC. We also got support from CCC for building Grameen website. So we chose to use GitHub pages. And so they gave us the design and then we are actually hosting it because we didn't want to go with the default choice, which is buggy. And I forget what it is. But yeah, wherever the Linux Foundation hosts the sites. We also have the VPS server and packages are hosted in AWS, and those VMs are funded by LF. I think that cost is about $90 per month. So thanks for that. Intel also donated few Ice Lake servers for CI at UNC. So we have good. So because we're using really old hardware for CI for Grameen for a long time. So we are getting there where we have better, more powerful hardware. I guess, yeah, it's here. UNC still has a bit older hardware. We'll discuss if we need to retire all our Mido systems and maybe move to EMRs. And then we'll need continued VPS server hosting support. Any questions on this? Okay.
So I had a question, if I may, from one of the previous slides. If you go back to the governance slide, I think it was. Yeah, management team. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, next one on. So the one after this, sorry. Oh, no, yeah. That's it, yeah. So one of the things that we do love to have as well, if we can, is as many different companies or organizations involved. So we've got Intel, we've got UNC, we've got Texas A&M. Do you have not just management in terms of contributors, do you have from many other places, or are they mainly concentrated in those?
No, contributors we have from other places. Like I just mentioned, A company, we have Photonics, yep. We have lots of other academic. Oh yeah, we have got lots of other active contributors. We just don't have, no one's like committed to being a maintainer. We have contributions from IBM, Alibaba. Actually, when I listed, we have contributions from a lot of the big and small companies.
I'm sorry if I missed that. No, that's great. This is exactly the sort of thing. Obviously, trying to get them as maintainers as well is good. But no, just having a good set of contributors is fantastic news. Thank you very much indeed, Mona.
Yeah, so I think next time we will include, maybe we can include that list as more comprehensive.
Yeah, that would be good. I mean, it doesn't need to have the full list, but just giving us an idea of the mix is very positive. And nice that you've got a bit of a geographic mix as well. So that's fantastic.
Yes, yeah. Okay. Yeah. So no change in the current. We've stabilized to these. Gitter chat is working well. And then yeah, all of the same things. That's it actually. Yeah.
Well, that's a great update. So I a moment ago dropped into chat the link to the annual review process. So TAC members, if you were less familiar with that, you can kind of quickly look at the questions and see whether or not those were answered to your satisfaction. Otherwise, please do ask Mona and crew here. And then before that, I dropped into chat the link for the project benefits. So Mona mentioned using some of the CI funding. There's a variety of other benefits, including helping getting people to conferences that they can promote the project at, support for building demos that can be put up online or webinars. So there's a variety of things, and we really want projects to be able to make use of that, make use of all of those benefits. Any questions from anybody on the TAC? I will flip down because there actually is one sort of open thing. Where's Gramming here? Gramming used to have as its TAC liaison, or we called it a TAC mentor back then, an individual from another company who's no longer engaged with the consortium. We do not have Nathaniel, Henry, or Bob on the call yet. If I just double check the attendance here real quick. So those individuals are not yet filling a role for liaisons. They'd be available to do that with Gramming. Otherwise, if there is another TAC member that would like to volunteer for double duty, feel free to do that. All right, well, I will circle back up with everybody in a later meeting and see if we can get that gap addressed. But meanwhile, we'll try to make sure that Gramming stays in connection with anything that needs to go back and forth to or from the TAC. All right, well, thank you very much for that update, everyone.
I have one last comment. Thank you.
Oh,
well, thanks
sure.
for the yeah. So I know everyone's attention is on CVM. So I want to say I'm actually quite excited about Grameen TDX project. Everyone's so focused on running full Linux in their CVMs, and while it's all good, I feel we're raising the security bar very little, if at all any. And problems like we have this workload identity work group. So I think we do need to look at some of the work that's happening, not just with Grameen, there are other projects, Project Oak, Astronaut. There's a whole bunch of us who are looking at how do you host lightweight TDs so you can make sense out of what you're running in your CVM. And I'm really excited about that line of research. We also have to see, of course, how do you host these in the cloud and such. So, and hope to come back with some of that and see more of that line of work from this community. Yes, that's all. Thank you.
Okay, great. Well, once again, thank you. Xie, Jenki. All right. I'm going to step over the baselines and we'll come back to that. And let's take a look at the GRC documents. Out on the mail list, you will have seen that Mark and the GRC had submitted 3 documents. So those documents are available in Google Docs format, but we kind of want to freeze the Google Docs format of those and bring them into change control. So I had asked Haitao to do that. So he did the automatic markdown conversion. There's a couple little things where the markdown conversion munged some stuff, but I would like people to certainly catch those things, but maybe focus most importantly on any substantive matters in the content. I see Simon was able to come in and provide some review, so I really appreciate that. I have also asked the attestation SIG, who had been involved, I think, along the way, just to double check that the use of RATS terminology or associated terms was consistent across how we like to use those terms with the CCC. But for each of the other members of the TAC, please go through the documents, and if you don't have any changes to the documents, you can still approve the PR, and that lets us know that you have that you've gone through it and that you approve it.
So again, these are live documents, and I already know I'm going to be making one change to the confidential payload governance document based on something we've discussed in the trustworthy workload identity SIG. We discovered that there needs to be separate governance requirements around sealing to the platform, for instance. But because the document is right now kind of sealed for review, I haven't changed it yet. But basically, it is. Don't think of these as like RFCs where assign a number and now it's a major issue. This is fairly, quickly developing space. So as things are discovered, these documents will evolve.
And once we get them finalized, we'd also like to get them externalized in the most visible way. So I've got a note over to Outreach to think about how they want to position those on the website. Right now, we have one place for all of our white papers. And I kind of wonder if some of these compliance-related documents deserve their own home. So I've floated that idea over to Outreach. I don't think I see anybody on the call today who straddles those groups, but if there is, would love your opinion on that. Also, are there any questions from anybody on the TAC about the general nature of these documents?
Yeah, I struggle a little bit with the direction and what's the intent is for these files. So I read over them. I don't see anything inherently wrong there. So don't get me wrong on the content there. But partially it does overlap with things like RATs and other groups are doing already, right? So I keep wondering what the purpose is and benefit of putting this out there. And I'm not trying to torpedo your work there, right? I think.
No, let me give you a concrete example. So in the bank at the JP Morgan Chase, we have a team called Base Compute. They are basically responsible for the security and controls of. And by the way, this document is not up for review yet because it's going to be.
I was about to say I don't know. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Right. So they are responsible for the security control governance of our on-premises data centers. And they are investigating confidential computing for a number of scenarios. They want to enable confidential computing for a fairly large estate of servers. So I sent them the drafts that are up for approval today and basically said, look, if you're going to govern this new technology, here is a concrete set of recommendations that you need to start paying attention to. So now they're going to be looking at it and saying, okay, how are we going to govern our verifier? What do we actually need out of it? How are we going to integrate the CI/CD pipelines and basically provide end-to-end security for our payloads? And what evidence do we need at all stages in that chain? You're not going to get that directly from RFC 9334. Right, so these are fairly actionable guides for an organization to start thinking about whether they're going to be control objectives, what are going to be their control procedures, what our internal audit is going to demand from teams that say, okay, we just adopted this technology for our means.
Maybe that context is what I was lacking a little bit. So how about adding like a pretext or something to these documents stating, look, we actively support and see as important RATs and all of the other things that we see as reliant, and I think partly we also like cite them in the document, right?
Mm-hmm.
This document is meant as a guideline and or
Yeah, so
rule
that's
book or
something the
something.
outreach team can do when they go and publish these broadly. But let me explain something about the structure of these documents that will probably help you also contextualize it. So there is this thing called the patterns language, and we maintain a copy of like 4 PDFs in the GRC SIG that I'm happy to share. There is basically a pattern to writing patterns. And the well-known structure is there is a context. So if you find yourself in a following situation, that's a context, then you will encounter a following problem. So that would be the problem section. Then there is a forces section, and the forces basically says these are the kinds of things that make solving this problem difficult. And then finally, there is a solutions section that says, okay, we will address the things that forces us to solve this problem. And then finally, specific to GRC SIG, we have a section that explains the actual governance expectations. So there is a structure to all of this. In fact, there is a patterns document that describes how to write a pattern. So it's kind of meta.
That makes sense, but yeah, maybe then.
So the context, the thing that you started
Highlight
with,
that or
like,
something,
what
or
is
put
the
it somewhere.
preamble? The
Because
preamble is the
I
context.
didn't find reference to that at least.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Lovely.
think that's very helpful context.
Let
and
me
we would
find.
probably
Let me
benefit.
find the. I'm just going to look it up and paste the link in the chat. But in the GRC SIG, we have a patterns language folder, and if you can read about it, and this is basically the methodology that we.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough.
followed.
I think then.
And by the way, I will
concerns
also tell you. So this is, I'm a practitioner of this. I'm an architect for the bank's cybersecurity technology controls, and we have to deal with things like FFIC and CSA, CCM, and FedRAMP, like all bunch of documents that describe our compliance governance obligations. I can tell you that these documents are written from the experience dealing with what's really out there, a really pathetic state of expressing governance expectations. We're trying to do better. So our internal teams, when they look at this, will find a way better system on which to build secure solutions.
That makes sense. And I think that I have nothing against the documents themselves then. I think what I am lacking is placing these documents in the right context of what you just said. Because for me, these were just like in a vacuum of, hey, we are the CCC, we know like writing about some fancy things we could do.
Sure. As I said, fantastic feedback for the
useful.
outreach team to how to coach this when communicating this outwards. But like I will tell you that our governance people, when I send them these, they had no problem understanding, why this is useful.
So yes, but at the same time, if you put it on the GitHub in the publications folder, it's not just the outreach team; it's also part of that GitHub PR where you have to make sure that people understand what this is about, right?
Yeah.
Because like publishing it is one point, but putting it on GitHub, like at least like I don't know, I'm like not saying how to do it, but at least put it in context a little bit of what this document is and how to read it from the GitHub context, right?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's my 5 cents. Thanks.
Okay, great feedback, Fritz. I'm sure a lot of people had similar questions about context. Easy to lose sight of how people who aren't working on something might not necessarily immediately see or understand the intent and some of the other surrounding context for what we work on. So we'll make sure that we get at least some sort of cover letter or intro to compliance patterns published at the same time that we put these out on the website. And anybody is welcome to help write that up. Should not be.
I think that part of Fritz's point, and I kind of get it, is that when you're when you're asking for collaborators on this, it would make it a lot easier if there's a context for review and collaboration. I think people are more likely to get involved if and presumably we could write one which could be used across multiple of these, right? But having that as a context for people who might be looking at it would probably improve the number of collaborators and how they do it, because I think that context is helpful as well. So maybe we should not wait until we've just published, but actually think about it as part of the collaboration steps as well. Fritz likes it.
Sure. Yeah, and maybe that's something that Hightow can add to the discussion on the PR, and or add a file that adds that context. And he could listen to this section of the recording so that he doesn't have to backtrack through other stuff. Gotta throw it on Hightow's shoulders since he's not here. All right, so with that in mind, there are these three different patterns that are in here, and probably the necessity of adding the cover letter or some additional context. Any other discussion to be had on these documents? I would like to be able to move these forward by the next meeting, so appreciate everybody getting their reviews in before our next meeting 2 weeks from now. Okay, let's talk a little bit about security baselines. Anybody who watched the recording or attended Emily's presentation live feel like they can help walk us through some of what was discussed and what we should do about it as a TAC? Thanks, Paul.
Well, I can a bit because I've attended a number of times when Emily's talked about these things, in fact. So the idea of the baseline is to provide an approach which is aimed at compliance. So when someone is looking at taking your project and using it in a context where there might be some compliance requirements across the life cycle. That's a clear thing across the life cycle of the product or service. Then knowing that the project has security baseline makes it a lot easier to provide information like who to contact in the event of a vulnerability being discovered. And that is kind of what it's about, really. And the idea is that for a project with just one maintainer, it shouldn't be too difficult to get to level 1. With maybe 5, 6, 7 maintainers, maybe level 2. And for sort of bigger projects like Grameen, actually, level 3 would be perfect. And so one of the things that the OpenSSF has done is to do mappings of the measures that the baseline provides to different types of regulatory regimes. And one that I know the most about is that's the slide there is the CRA, right? And so you can say that if you've got if you've got security baseline level 2, for instance, then you meet these of the CRA compliance requirements. And that's enormously helpful for anyone who's actually looking to productize or just consume your project. And so what I would love to see is all projects in the CCC, which are in any way active, aiming for at least level 1 baseline. I think it's something that we should be doing. I think it's something that the mentors, or whatever they're called, the liaisons, should be encouraging and facilitating. And one of the things that I'd love to see is Grameen saying, "Oh, this looks interesting. Maybe we should look at this and find out what it does," and then coming back to the TAC and saying, we did this, here are the easy parts, here are the difficult parts, and this is why we think it's going to be useful. And so that's kind of the approach that the OpenSSF is providing, but it's absolutely applicable to all open source projects, whether they're parts of the CCC or elsewhere. But I'd love the CCC, given that we're a security-based organization, to be leading the way as one of the many foundations that is really adopting this. Is that helpful as a starting point?
I think that's a great way to kick this off. And since we do have, I don't know if Mona is actually still on. I see Mona in the list, but we also have Jurgen from Coconut,
Yep.
Kailun as well, still from Grameen. I'm guessing that none of you had attended the last week's session where this baselines project was introduced, but all the things that Mike just said, it would raise compliance levels where you can demonstrate compliance to some of these other frameworks. Right now, our projects had focused on the best practices badge, and some had been sampling things with scorecard. Curious, just initial reactions, or it's fair to say you don't know enough about baselines because you hadn't seen the presentation.
Yeah, I did not see the presentation. So I think is the idea, but I mean, like we just talked about the OpenSSF badge. I thought you guys were already recommending it, isn't it? Sorry,
So the
Yes,
scorecard is
you've
different
already
to
done the
baseline. Sorry.
yeah.
Yeah, so now there's the badges, there's scorecard, and there's baseline, and I'm also less familiar with these other projects, Minder and Security Insights. Baselines kind of overlaps with some of these, but and I can't really speak to it well, the differences. But it's one of the things that Mike was just talking about is this correlation with compliance requirements. So it might do something to be able to say that you are compliant to CRA.
And other regulations and stuff, right? So there's a number of them.
Yeah, sorry, very tiny font here, but there's several things listed here as examples.
And I actually have something which has just come up, and literally I've just got an email about it here. And thank you to Sal, who was previously our technical community architect, bringing it up. In that there's an issue to do with TEs and the CRA here, which is not directly related to baseline, but I think it's really important that people look at. Dan, Intel need to look at this. Whoever from ARM and from AMD and from NVIDIA is around should also look at this. I think it's a really important thing. I'm happy to have a discussion on Slack or something if we want to talk about it. I just wanted to bring that up because I know people are beginning to drop off.
Okay, thanks. I'll take a look at this offline.
Sorry.
Maybe just to kind of put an end on the discussions for baselines today. For the remaining TAC members that's on, we do need to come back to this next session and then either provide some feedback to Emily about our intentions one way or another. I guess I set that up as an either or. So we do need to figure out what we want to do about baselines. We have this request from Emily, who is also the vice chair from the governing board. And there's a number of different recommendations we can give to projects, but we have to figure out which ones we actually put our weight behind. So I will be looking for somebody besides me to lead that conversation next time.
So I won't be at the next TAC meeting because it's RSA week. So there may be a number of other people who aren't going to be able to make that TAC meeting, and we may even want to consider postponing or cancelling that based on that. Just a thought.
Yeah, that is a great point. Okay, so last time was NARCs and the baselines, and then this was gramming, and this is a stale view of this spreadsheet. There we go. So May 1st, we were scheduled to talk about Veracruz as the main agenda item. Can we do a quick poll of the few of us that remain here? Who will not be available?
I will not.
Fritz, your virtual hand is up. Does that mean not available?
Yeah, yes, correct. Yeah, I won't be there. It's a public holiday in Germany. It's 3rd of May, is Labor Day.
Oh, it's also Labor Day.
I think it's like
Yeah.
several European countries. I'm not sure how many of those, but
It's not uncommon, is it? Maybe I think it probably does make sense, given they've got a whole bunch of reasons that people may not be attending to. Your call, Dan, of course, but just a thought to cancel.
Yeah, it sounds like that's probably not going to be a great day for attendance. So I think we will plan to cancel the May 1st meeting. All right. Seems like we've got not a whole lot of people left to talk about OC3. So if somebody is excited to talk about their OC3 takeaways, we have the time to do it. If we want to come back to this at a later meeting,
let's do it at a later meeting. I think it'll hold.
Just wanted to check with others who had made the time to be available. If they were hoping to discuss that or something else, now is your chance to speak up. All right, well, I take silence as people are ready to move on. So I think we'll give people a good amount of time back for their day.
Thank you very much indeed.
All right, thanks everybody.
See you, folks.